So my question is on gun control. So the Gun Violence Archive reported 647 mass shootings in the US in 2022 alone, sorry. Meanwhile, though tragic, there were only 7 in the UK since 1996. Do you believe the marginal increase in freedom is worth the loss of life?
So the answer as an American and as a Second Amendment advocate is yes, but it's not the same for every country. Meaning that in the UK, before the vast gun ban of the 1990s, there were not a lot of guns in circulation in the UK before that. And the number of mass shootings in the UK was similarly low before the mass ban. So the idea that the legislation in the United Kingdom is what created the low level of gun crime is not true. There were low levels of gun crime well before that. Were you to try to apply that same thing in Texas, say a vast gun ban in Texas, and you were going to try and grab all the guns in Texas, I promise you, you would have an immediate increase in the amount of gun crime, particularly against federal officers coming to get the guns. The entire purpose in the United States obviously being a revolutionary country against our motherland, the United States experiment was built on the idea of the gun being important in resistance to government tyranny, as well as in terms of self-defense. Now, once a huge percentage of the population owns guns, once guns are readily available, the idea that you are going to be able to either full-scale confiscate or remove those guns in any practicable way is not true. That's certainly the case in the United States. And so anytime there's been a serious gun control regime that's been put in place in the United States, and there are many of them, right? California has pretty serious gun control. Chicago has gun control. DC has gun control. The rates of gun violence have not gone down because the availability of guns remains widespread. Typically, the rule is that people who follow the law tend to follow the law and criminals tend not to. The widespread availability of guns in the United States is not something that can simply be done away with. Now, as far as sort of the principled argument is that I'm a law-abiding citizen and I should be able to protect myself. That is the principled argument. So in small-scale communities, for example, homeowners associations, there are, in many cases in the United States, gun bans. And I don't have a huge problem with that in the sense that you have a lot of social cohesion, you know all your neighbors, you have a security force that is quickly responsive to you. With that said, in a country of 340 million people that is incredibly diverse and where a huge percentage of the population has access to a gun, the idea of a widespread removal of Second Amendment rights would result in some pretty terrible things.
So do you think there's a value to a cultural shift away from guns then?
Not necessarily. It depends where you are. So the idea that I want to think about it. It's a really interesting question. And again, I think it's kind of based on circumstance. I'm not sure the entire United States is similar in this way. So I like the idea of being able to protect myself and my family. I think owning a gun in order to do that is a good thing in the United States. I don't know what I would think if I hadn't grown up in a culture that actually values that. So would I see value in moving it away from that? I don't think it's that easy to move the culture away from that. So in terms of waving magic wands, I'm running up against reality. But on an ideological level, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure I have a good answer to it, frankly.
And one quick smaller question. The UK is slowly phasing out certain types of knives. By phasing out, I mean making illegal to hold. What do you think about that? Because those knives there's no reason for a person to carry them as a British citizen. But
I don't know enough about knife policy in the UK. In the United States, we have, tanks. So.
Kind of got him thinking there at the end there, right? That was kind of funny.
Yeah, that was interesting, right? That he actually was a little stumped for a second about right?
Because I feel like he's so ready to respond to arguments that use coercive government to take away people's guns, and this guy was just like, "What if we just try to push the culture?" And it's like I kind of think he realized he was like, maybe I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he couldn't decide, right? Because I think because it is interesting. Because given his position, he should just be like, yeah, okay, sure, let's try it, right? But or maybe even just yeah, you could try. I'm pessimistic, whatever. But it's I think it does say something about where he's coming from politically, culturally, right? That it's he doesn't want to just immediately agree to that because his instinct is to not want to say the anti-gun thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting just because I think he was it was actually a pretty smart question when you think about it, because he was sort of acknowledging, he's like, oh, well, because he started by saying, well, the UK is not the same, or the US is different. It depends where you are, right? Everyone's culture is different. So you kind of already opened the door to a sort of cultural argument about because he wasn't making a universalist argument that like everyone should have guns, right? He kind of started by saying, well, depends where you are. And he said that a couple of times. So then it was smart of this kid, I think, to say, well, what about trying to change the culture, right? Because you've already acknowledged it's okay to have cultures that don't have guns. And he started with the stats to show how like much less murder there is in those cultures. So it was a good question, I think.
Totally, yeah. Also, I think Shapiro was being a little slippery on gun crime in the UK, because I think what it sort of sounded like he was trying to say, and I mean, this is like the fair part of his response on that, is that it's not that, oh, the UK has so much less gun crime than the United States just because that sweeping gun ban, because like it had lower gun crime in the United States anyway. All right, I think that's probably true. Fair enough, right? But the real question is, does the UK have a lot less gun crime now than it had before the gun ban? And that can still be true compatibly with that. In fact, I did the sort of streamerish thing I kind of disapprove of people doing, but I did it anyway just now. And like looking something up real quick while you're on air, which is like really a really bad way to take in information. But like I was just too curious in the moment not to. And I will say that the article that I found, this is aoav.org.uk. So, whatever. People can look up for themselves and find out if this thing I just found in a quick search is like a good source or not. I genuinely don't know. But but at least according to this article, for what it's worth, what did the guy just say who was talking to Shapiro, that there were like something like 16 gun killings in the last like 20 years or something in the UK?
I thought he said 6, but that can't be right.
Okay. Well, whatever it was some tiny number, and it was maybe even since 1996, but it was like certainly over the course. It certainly wasn't a 1-year number. It was certainly a multi-year number, and it was tiny. And so, at least according to this, since the introduction of stricter gun control measures, gun-related deaths in England and Wales have decreased dramatically. Gun homicides in England and Wales had risen from 26 in 1969 to 66 in 1994, and the year of Dublin, which was the mass shooting that like inspired them to impose all this gun control. Gun deaths peaked at 84 across the United Kingdom. So if it was 84 in 1 year, right, and 66 before that in 1 year, and now it's like 16 or maybe even 6, whatever he said, over the course of some big multi-year period, then like, okay, sure, the UK might have had lower gun crime than the US without all of this, but it sure sounds like they have less gun crime than they used to because they did this. And I mean, that does seem like a pretty important point that he's kind of running roughshod over.
Yeah, there's definitely other examples. Like I feel like Australia did that, where they just like took away the guns and crime went way down. Like it happens.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, so yeah, whatever.
You know what I was thinking about too?
Yeah.
What I was thinking about when we were watching this is like, I remember maybe in a previous debate breakdown, we were talking about like more kind of economic integration between the US and Canada. And I remember I was like, we were talking about how we were surprised that didn't happen, like NAFTA or whatever. And then and then I was watching that and I was like, well, I kind of do. I kind of like the separation because I want the guns to be kept out of here.
Yeah.
If there was more if there's just like totally open borders, then like, I mean, the gun thing, I would be worried as a Canadian about the guns getting in here myself. Right.
So this is a good, Victor is now in favor of building a Detroit-Windsor wall.
Yeah, border wall. Favor of the border wall.
All right, fair enough. You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive postgames on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.